Good afternoon, everyone. Hopefully you can hear and see me. If you can hear me, if you can see me, what does it sound like? What can you see? Give me a 10, give me a 1. Just let me know. Drop something in the chat box. Would love to know. Trying up a new setup today, so let's see how it goes. So if you can hear me, if you can see me, drop something in the chat box. Or if you can't see me or hear me, drop something in the chat box. Either way, just give me some feedback so I know that you can hear me okay. Jonathan, thank you so much. I take, Victor, thank you. Welcome to everyone. Welcome to everyone. So now I'm glad you can all make it. I see, we've got quite a few people on, which is really, really great. Thank you, Aurelia. You can hear and see me as long as I'm looking good, shaven. And if you're in your shorts, that's also good. What I'm going to ask you to do is please.
I don't have a body.
If I can ask you to please turn your cameras on, and I just need half a second. I see that I just need to quickly disconnect Mr. Siri here, because otherwise he might give us a few headaches. So give me half a second. I'll be right back. We're back. My apologies. Siri was starting to tell me that I had no body and no legs, but then I am a short person for those of you who know me. So no, welcome to everyone. It's great to have you guys all on. And yeah, if you can, as I say, turn your cameras on, because I'd love to have some interaction with you. If you've been to one of my sessions before, these are very, very interactive. Oh, you have no authorization. That's unusual, but thank you for letting me know. Let me quickly change that. You should be able to. My apologies, Jonathan. Thank you for spotting that. Have a quick look. You should have access to being able to start your video. Yes, thank you. Perfect. And there's always some sort of technical glitch in there, but okay. Now let's get started, because there's a lot of slides, so we're going to go try and move through this one rather quickly today. And when you think about it, we're looking at 3 performance conversation skills that everyone needs to have. When I say all leaders need to master, but literally everyone needs to have. And most of you know me. You're not all new if you haven't. My name is Roberto Dal Corso. Welcome to the first. If you're here for the first time, welcome. I love to have interaction sessions. So I'm going to ask you straight up front, cameras on, be prepared to play full out. And I've just lost my video screen. So, this is another interesting one. Got to try and figure this out. I don't know if it's because of the load shedding that's going on. I think it's because of the load shedding that's going on. So hopefully you can still see and hear me. If you can, give us a thumbs up. Jonathan, can you still see and hear me? Yeah, perfect. Okay. I can't see you guys other than on my little screen down the back. I don't know why. The big screen I had has just died on me. But it should come on any. Yes, it is the load shedding. So it is the generators. They're busy kicking in. Screen, believe it or not, is actually coming on. So yeah, these are the marvelous wonders of work in Africa. We had a few issues last week. We got it sorted out, but we're back on, and I've got you guys. So quickly about me, I love to have interaction sessions. So please give me your full permission to play full out with me today, so that we can learn a little bit as well as have some fun. Because at the end of the day, this is really what we're here for, is to learn and have some fun at the same time that we do it. So, the agenda for today is, really looking at why leadership matters. And when you think about it, does leadership really matter? And if you think about it, a lot of you might go, well, I don't manage a team. I'm not seen as a leader. And I'm going to say to you, well, that's maybe just because of the definition you have. Because I believe a leader is anyone who's out there to influence the behavior, the thinking, the actions of another person is a leader. So whether you're a house mom, husband, family, friend, officially titled as a manager or leader, you are a leader. So that's the first thing, but we're going to have a look at that in a bit more detail. And then secondly, we're going to have a look at the 3 communication skills. We touched on this a little bit last week, but we're going to deep dive into, how do we go about structuring goals, diagnosing, and also providing a matching leadership style. And again, why is all of that even important to us? And then, we're going to share a little bit on how we can get started. So let's jump straight into it. And yeah, I know I've done all the speaking. So let's start off. I did say it's going to be interactive. So I'm going to quickly grab my poll. Where's my polls gone? I've got a poll for you. And oh, that's not the polls. Where are my polls gone? Polls have hidden behind themselves. So let me I want to restart the poll. Let's see if this will restart it. Yes. Okay. Share the poll. Hopefully you can see. That's really the question is, when you think about it, what would you like the most from your leader, your manager, your leader, or it could be someone else? And think about it. I'm giving you lots of choices down the side there, and you might need to scroll down. So, it could be something along the lines of, I'd like some appreciation. I would like then, trust, communication, collaboration. What are some of the most important things that you would like from your manager, from your leader right now? And hopefully, let me know if you can actually see that, because like last week, we had some issues with the Zoom polls. And I'm just wondering if, yeah, okay, you can see it, then please go ahead, select one of those and hit share, because I'd love to get, your ideas on that. Yeah, Victor, thank you. Jonathan, thank you for letting me know that it's all up and running. But if you can see the poll, then go ahead and, just select one of those, whether it's appreciation, trust, communication, and then I can just quickly share it with you. We can get some ideas of what everyone's thinking. I'm just going to give everyone last couple of seconds in there. Thank you, Karan. Welcome, welcome. Communication. Anyone else got any other thoughts in there? What else? What else? Communication, engagement, empathy, leadership, trust, appreciation. Any of those? Okay. No, communication. I love it, but thank you, Karan, in there. And, when you think about it, communication is really, let's say, the source of absolutely pretty much everything we do day in and day out. And, and this one, you can drop it into the chat box. So I've got a question for you. Think about your worst boss. What did they do that, you say, well, they were just the worst boss? What did they do? What did your worst boss do? And drop that into, the chat box. And don't forget to hit send, because I'd love to hear, what did your worst boss do? What are your thoughts about certain things in there? Communication mobbing, I like that. Thank you, Khan. Anything else from anyone else? Jonathan, Victor, Aurelia, what do you guys think? Drop it into the chat box. What did your worst boss do when you just think about your worst boss? So quickly scroll down there. Anything else that you can think of? I mean, I love that one. Threw all my documents in the air. I love that one. Thank you for sharing it. I mean, I think it's some of my worst bosses. Well, I guess very similar to mobbing. It's like, yeah, almost threatening you. Yeah, avoiding discussion. Absolutely. Maybe it's a bit of trust, but avoiding the point. But yeah, not wanting to discuss things. And my next question to you then is, if that's what they did, then how did they make you feel? How did you feel when that was going on? So Jonathan, tell me, how did you feel when all your documents were thrown up? Or Khan, when you were busy being mobbed, or when the boss wants to avoid discussion? Drop that into the chat box. How did that make you feel? Because I'm just thinking of demotivated, frustration. Very good words. I was about to say the similar things, because yeah, my worst bosses made me feel demotivated, frustrated, sometimes even to the point of, what am I doing this for? Very bad and unimportant. Yeah, absolutely. They can belittle us. They make us feel worse than we are. Yeah, not respected. Absolutely. And when you think about it, why is how we feel important? Well, how we feel is important because the way we feel is really going to be the way we act inside the organization. And the way we act inside the organization really does determine the results we get. You think of what's going on in the industry today when you can't find good new people that leave for high turnover. Yeah, when you're feeling disrespected, poor leaders, increase turnover. They will also lower engagement, and again, we've talked about it, demotivated, being frustrated. they lower productivity with it. And, the poor results, when you think about it, and this has been research-based, that poor leadership, poor managers typically cost an organization as much as around 7% of their total annual sales. So just think about it, 7%. So if you're a 100 million euro company, we're talking about 7 million euros. And I've gone out and launched a lot of new product lines and services, but just think one that you got to launch from scratch tomorrow and find 7 million within the next 12 months. But sometimes that's the cost of poor leadership. And that's been researched, got some papers on with you there. Now, let's turn that around a little bit and drop it in the chat box. What did your best leader do? What did your best leader do? And I'd love to know that. Drop it in the chat box. What did your best leaders do? Vertrauen, trust, absolutely. They trusted you, trusted your work. A lot of trust. Any other thoughts in there? Because there's a lot about trust. Aurelia, thank you. Gave me autonomy and trust. A lot about trust in your responsibility. And then my next question, again, and this you can imagine what it's going to be. So how did that make you feel? How did it make you feel when you were given responsibility, you were trusted, they trusted your work, they trusted the autonomy? How did that make you feel? Motivated, feeling done. Motivated, listen to, important, valued, absolutely. So managers, bosses, leaders can have a tremendous impact on us. Aurelia says, just was able to go on and get the job done. Absolutely, because you got the responsibility, got the autonomy that goes with it. So, when you think about it, exactly, when I think of my best leaders, what they landed up doing is really, they pretty much, in a nutshell, gave me what I wanted when I needed. And probably my best leader was a gentleman out of the US named Mark Patilla. And, he certainly accelerated my development, the development of the organization. And because of that, it increased productivity, performance, engagement. And in my case, I became more of a proactive problem solver, which helped him and the organization. And, a lot of what I'm going to share today is really about the SL2 model. I'll share that a bit with you. So hopefully you'll give me some permission, but I think there's a lot of value in it. So, also one of the questions I have, and you can drop this into the chat box, what do your best leaders, how have they positive impacted you? I mean, I think of mine, my best leader, I go back to Mark, and he gave me so much tremendous confidence, allowed me to try new things, mess up at new things. But at the end of the day, I always knew that he had my back. If things would go wrong, he was there to not pick it up, but he was there to be my coach, be my guide. Generate growth, absolutely. So these are the positive impacts that leaders can have. And I said to you, we're going to talk about the SL2 model. So the SL2 model, or the situational leadership model, from one of my US partners, Ken Blanchard, and it's time tested. It's really, easy to understand, easy to remember, easy to use. It's a superb framework. And some of you have been on the SL2 in various formats. So, if it is, then it's a quick refresher for you. If you're seeing it for the first time, then hopefully it'll make a lot of sense, because it really is very simple. Coaching, absolutely. That's part of it. I mean, and then we said we're going to look at the 3 skills and the 3 conversations around goal setting. In goal setting, what must be done, when must it be done by? Then we look at the diagnosing, and we'll go into more detail and have some games. And then we'll try and match up different leadership styles in there. So firstly, number 1, absolutely goal setting. And when you think about it, when I talk about a goal setting conversation, any thoughts that come to mind, just drop them into the chat box. We would love to hear your thoughts on that, because when I look at a goal setting conversation, it's really 2 people, and as you can see from a photograph, 2 people communicating, 2 people discussing a goal, a strategy. We look at what needs to be done, when does it need to be done, and even who needs to do it. So that's absolutely one of the most important parts of the goal, is getting the clear focus on it. So if you've only got 1 minute and someone comes into you and says, oh, Roberto, help me, I've got only 1 minute and I need your help, then the first thing I need to ask is like, okay, what do you need my help with? Just so we can get clear on what is the outcome that we're trying to achieve in these 60 seconds, if that's all we've really got. And when you think about SMART goal setting, now this is an acronym that I think everyone has heard before. You might have seen it in a different format, you might not. If you've seen, if you use or know SMART goal setting, just drop in a yes or give me a thumbs up in there. But really, it's when you think about goal setting, when you write goals down within the organization, I believe it's, the S and the T, which is the specific and trackable, that gets written into the goal setting document. The other three parts of it, the motivating, attainable, and relevant, that's where now the discussion takes place with your manager. Thank you, Jonathan. Thank you to everyone who's using smart goal setting. Good for you guys. And when you think about it, in a lot of goal setting, that M now I've got it down as motivating. Some people call that as measurable. The reason I say it's rather motivating than measurable, because I believe measurable, we can track it. But motivating is one of the things that many leaders don't actually go into a lot of detail and say, and check, what is your excitement on doing something? Just think about it. Think of your own to-do list. You got a to-do list that's probably got 1,001 items on there. And if you think about it, some of them you are quite excited to do, some of them maybe not so much, and you're sticking them down. And that's why goals need to be motivating in there. And also relevant, very important, because quite often the manager will tell you, this is what needs to get done, go out and do it. And then they just forget to tell you of, why is it actually important? Why are we doing this? So don't overlook at that. That's why, the MDA and the R is really part of what gets discussed. The other two gets written down in the goal setting. And over the years, I've led teams around the world. I think at one point I had 3 teams on 3 different continents, and yeah, goal setting was always challenging. So I came up with myself a couple of things where I said, how to make goals smarter? Because again, everything needs to be documented, needs to be discussed. And I came up with, timeliness, quality, quantity, cost effectiveness, percentage of change as, bigger areas which are absolutely important within the organization. Then what I also did, and I'm going to share it, and I'm not going to go through every single one of these, because you are going to get the slides at the end of it. But then, it's okay, how do we take those? What are some ideas that I was using, and I used it for myself to be able to put these into, a goal setting document. So those are some of the things that I came up with. You'll get it, we'll share it. You don't need to jot it down and remember it. So now, once you've gotten clear on the goal, so we know what a good job looks like. We know who's going to do it, when it's going to be done by. You've set the person up to win. Now the question comes into diagnosing, and diagnosing might be something a little bit new, but a diagnosing conversation is really me as the manager, as the leader, or even as a parent or a husband and wife. You assess the competence and commitment of the other person on a specific goal and task. And I'm going to keep saying this, specific goal and task. It's not the person, but specific goal and task. So that, that's a diagnosing conversation. And when you think about it, the developmental cycle, Abraham Maslow many years ago said that there were 4 stages in which, or 4 development levels you go through in order to learn any new skill. And again, it's any new skill, any new task, but it's not person specific. So, but we go through these 4 distinct stages when you're learning it. And I can give you examples after examples, whether it's tying your shoes, learning how to drive a car, you've gone through these 4 developmental cycles. And when you're diagnosing, as I said, you're doing it in collaboration with the individual, you're looking at their competence and commitment. Those are really the 2 fundamental: competence, commitment. And you're probably going, well, okay, give us a little bit more about these 2 key factors in there. Well, when you think about competence, this is really, can they demonstrate any goal or specific task-specific knowledge and skills? Is there something specific that they've already done before in the past? That's, it's understanding the what as well as the how in there. And, that's the competence side of it. When you also think of, the other side of it, can we demonstrate transferable skills and knowledge? And this is examples of transferable skills. Just a quick example. COVID happened and I started to actually enjoyed cooking. I wasn't very good at it in the beginning. So we had the service which, they kind of would send you a recipe and all the ingredients. I had that come around the house, twice a week, and I started getting involved. And initially, I think I burnt most of the meals, but it gradually got better. So initially, I did not demonstrate goal or task-specific knowledge and skills. And I thought, well, it's going to be easy. A recipe, how difficult can it be? But I was really committed. And, committed is really about motivation as well as confidence. And one key important thing is don't confuse commitment for competence. And I say that again, because quite often, You can be very excited about doing a new task or something that you've never done before. Yeah, if anyone can mute, if everyone could just mute their microphones, that would also certainly help. Otherwise, I can quickly jump in and mute them all from my side. Down the bottom here, I will be back in a second. How do I mute here? Okay, now it's got to think of where do we mute everybody? I think it's in here. Hopefully I've been able to mute it. Yeah, perfect. That's better. Perfect. I'm glad it's all sorted out there. So yeah, don't confuse commitment with competence, because quite often as managers, we'll see the excitement, of the person we're speaking to, our team member. They're all excited in front of them. And suddenly we go, oh, they've got confidence, so they must be committed. And they're all super excited. But that doesn't mean that they can do the actual task. Commitment and competence are two different things. So just don't confuse those, because commitment is the motivation and the confidence, and not necessarily having the skills or the knowledge of how to go about doing something in there. And I know we're going through this quite quickly. And just to give you an idea, because quite often, when you look at the 4 developmental cycles, you've got D1, D2, D3, and D4. And, a key distinction there is having a look at, the competence and the commitment side. So if you think of D1, you've got really high, and it should be the other way around in terms of, you've really got very high commitment and rather low competence in there, as you can see the red and the green in there. Because if you think about it, when you start something new, a new project, you're generally very excited. Just think back of when you first learned how to drive a car. In my case, you learned how to drive a car, super excited. It was freedom. No skill, because I'd never done it before. Seen parents do it before, seen my siblings do it, but I had never done it. No sooner had I actually started to do it and try it, and suddenly my confidence went down, because I thought, whoa, this is a lot harder than I thought. When you think about rearview mirrors, rules of the road, gears, clutch, oh, it just felt overwhelming, got frustrated. I felt demotivated. My skill had increased a bit, but slowly, the intention is to try and get all of your team members on all of their goals up to D4. And because a person is D1 on a specific goal or task, doesn't mean that they're bad. It just means that, they're doing something new. If you're doing something new, this is generally where you will always start. Let me just go back a sec. Yeah, because generally, if you're doing a new task, you're always going to start from a D1 or a D2 perspective. And I'll give you a couple of examples later. And just to anchor it in so you fully understand it, I'll explain that in a short bit. But, it really is D1, D2, but it's goal or task specifically orientated in there, because that's where you're generally going to start anything new that we've done. So just to give you an idea, and, the easiest way to help you fully ingrain this and understand it is, think about a task, a goal, or a skill that you absolutely excel at, and then just drop it into the chat box. Start describing yourself. What would it, describe yourself? I mean, drop that in. So think of a goal, task, a skill where you're absolutely an ace, that you can absolutely ace. Describe yourself. In my case, I think, running webinars, done, I don't know, a couple of hundred of these over the last number of years. I feel fairly comfortable at it. I'm sure I can teach a lot of people how to do it, how to utilize the technology. So I probably know if I had to describe myself, yeah, I can teach a bit. Perfect. Rashad, negotiations. Now tell me, if negotiations are a skill that you absolutely excel at, describe that a little. I bet you could probably teach us on it. You could guide us, coach us on it. You could, the ins and outs. You know everything. You've mastered it. You probably could create some trainings. You probably even do that for your internal teams already. So just think of a couple of words. How would you describe yourself on any given task or goal that you're absolutely brilliant at? Presentations, photography, absolutely. Describe yourself. How does that make you feel? How would it be described? So working with teams, I love it. But the thought behind it is, how would you describe it? Would you describe yourself as a master, a teacher, enthusiastic, love it? Those sort of things. Just to dig it in as being a D4, in terms of, as I say, webinars, I feel, yeah, facilitator, yeah, love it. So when you think back, and the skills you've mentioned, whether it's the photography, the negotiations, managing teams, think of going back to the beginning when you first started out. How did that feel? I mean, I think of back, when I started doing, webinars for the first time. Oh, I was super excited. I wanted to do it. I knew I wanted to do it. I knew why I wanted to do it, but I'd never done one before. I'd never used all of the technology. So I did feel a little bit uncertain. I was going to say unsure. Absolutely. That's the way I felt. I wasn't totally confident. But, yeah, it's like starting to walk. Absolutely. You've got to start somewhere. But either you're starting from a place where you're super enthusiastic or not so enthusiastic, but you've got limited skills in there. And it's, it's learning to walk, as Jonathan says. And then, so what happens next? In my case, I did the webinars. I made some silly mistakes in it, but I learned a lot from it. I realized that it was a lot harder than what I initially thought. And as I said, as in the previous example, yeah, the motivation did decline. But it didn't stop me from doing it. I just took it on as a learning and thought, how do I learn? How do I get better? Because I love doing this. I love connecting with people. And then something at one point, suddenly it just changes. And suddenly you start to, okay. In my case, I started to okay, 4 out of 5 webinars went reasonably well. Maybe 1 or 2 out of the 5. I still made a few mistakes in there, but suddenly I could start to build on my competence because the skills were starting to emerge. Confidence was a little bit wavy because I'd get one right, get one wrong, make some mistakes, but I was getting better at the skill. And that's the same thing that you guys have gone through, either negotiation, leading the team, the photography side of it. You slowly get better in there. And just to go back and give you a bit more information. So, D1 is really an enthusiastic beginner. And when you think about it, low competence is the important one. High commitment is really the other one. Now, that's kind of, the two in there. And, we're eager to learn, we're committed, we're excited, we want to go out and do it. Sometimes we have no idea how to do it. We're totally we're inexperienced in it because it is something new. Tying your shoelaces, learning to drive a car, PowerPoint, Excel, Zoom, any of those were new skills at one point in time. How to use a mobile phone. I mean, we're not like the kids who grew up with it attached to their arm. So it's something we've had to learn in there. Now, in a question to you, and I really want you to drop this into the chat box is, what is wrong with letting people, who are in a D1, on a specific goal or task, letting them figure it out? What's wrong with that? What do you think would be wrong with, someone who's an enthusiastic beginner, just leave them alone, let them get on with the task. What do you think's wrong with that? And I'd love you to drop it into the chat box. What are your thoughts around why that might not be such a good idea to do that in your team? And think about it. I know you guys are thinking, yep, Jonathan says, no, jump on the call, no problem. But from my thoughts, I'm just thinking, what's wrong with letting people figure it out on their own? Well, think about it. If you are enthusiastic and brand new at something, and suddenly people let you sort it out on your own, I kind of get the feeling that suddenly I feel overwhelmed. I feel unsure, and that kind of knocks both of mine. So I don't know how to do it in the first place. Now, the only thing it does is, scared to start. Absolutely. They don't know where to start and they're scared. So they're feeling overwhelmed. And, to me, doing that is probably the quickest way to failure. It's not ensuring success because, a person's going to get demotivated. And also, I mean, the second question in there, and, if you can drop it in the chat box, why don't people ask for help when they're in that stage? And, probably the most common answer I get coming out of that, and if you can, drop it into the chat box, why don't people ask for help? And, in speaking to people, they don't ask for help because of a couple of reasons. One, they've had that alignment conversation with their manager, with their boss. They know what, they know what a good job looks like. And suddenly they go, ooh, I don't know how to do it. And, fear of getting exposed. Absolutely. Am I going to look bad? What are the other people going to think about me? I've been hired and employed to do a job, but, what does it look like if I can't do it? Unsure, absolutely. So those are the things with it. And, again, I go back to my best boss ever, Mark. And Mark at one point looked at my goals when we were setting goals, and he said to me, everything that you've got on you, you're either D4 or D3. He says, I don't see anything D1 and D2. And I said, well, and he looked and he said to me, the reason I want some D1, D2 goals in there is because if you're not in D1 or D2, you're not developing as an individual. And I thought about that, and think about it today. Isn't that more true today than it was 25 years ago? Where if you're not growing as an individual, not developing your skills, well, in a couple of years, you're going to be obsolete. So you need to be in a D1, D2, taking on new different tasks all the time in there. So D2, as we said, disillusioned learner, because that's where, you've tried it, it didn't work out, you figured it out, it was harder than what you thought. So yeah, you've got a little bit of competence, but suddenly your commitment has kind of crashed there. And now you're feeling discouraged and frustrated, overwhelmed, confused, because you're just not sure that you can do it. But again, your competence is slowly starting to increase in there. And a question for you: what causes disillusionment? What causes people to be disillusioned, disappointed, a bit of frustration that goes in there? What causes that? Love to get some of your thoughts. What causes disillusionment? Now, I'm not going to go away until everyone's at least type something in there. So quickly drop something in the chat box. What causes disillusionment? I can't give you the answers all the time. You did offer to, and you did promise that you were going to play full out. No success. Yeah, if you're not, if you're trying things and you're not achieving anything, you feel like, that's going to disappoint you, disillusion you. It's like taking that first pace. You take one step and then you want to take failure. Absolutely, Aurelia, thank you. Repeating same things over and over again. Absolutely. Wasn't that Einstein who said, that's a sign of insanity, not doing different things? Absolutely. But those are the sort of things that do cause there's a disillusionment in there. So think back, as a manager, as a partner, as a husband, as a wife, when you're doing with your kids, what you're doing with your co-workers, they're always going to be in one of these four phases. What do they actually need? So, D3 is really about now you're starting to get more competence, you're building on it, it's getting high, but you've got that wavering commitment. Again, I go back to me trying to learn how to cook. And it was kind of wavering because the one meal would work, the next one wouldn't. The one meal would be good. And, then it was burnt, or there's too much salt in it, or too little salt in it. So, I started to, feel a little bit hesitant. Likewise, the first time I mentioned there was something that I felt I was good at was doing these webinars. I love doing webinars. I love doing, even more so, is doing one-to-one group sessions. And I remember the first time, I was asked to do a group session. I think there was about 350 people. We were in Frankfurt. And I was like, whoa, that's a little bit scary, because I had never done such a big group before. So I felt a little bit hesitant. I'd done these things before, but I must say, I did waver a little bit of how I felt, but I had the skills to do it. And then eventually, what builds, confidence and competence? So think about it, what did your manager, what did they say or do that helped you build your confidence in your competence? And I'd love you to drop it in. I'm just saying, do not have guidelines, don't know what to do. Absolutely. Practice, that certainly helps to build confidence in your competence. Just keep doing it, just keep trying it, try more of it. Absolutely, those certainly, will help to build confidence. Is practice, and they say, practice is the mother of all skill, because you need to keep practicing. I mean, why does everyone walk? Because we've practiced it so often. Try it out. You either win or you learn. Unlearning, keep doing. Absolutely, use. See the feedback, not as, winning or losing, passing or failing, success or failure, but see it as a learning in there. And that certainly helps to build our confidence. So, at the end of the day, D4 is where we get high competence, high commitment in there. Our employees are self-reliant. And again, this is specific task or goal related. It's not, as I said to you, it's not the person, because quite often we'll see an individual and we'll know this guy's really a great guy, does great job overall, really, really good. Might even call him, one of the achievers. Absolutely, but that doesn't mean that he's going to be a D4 on every single goal or task. There's some goals and tasks where they will be D1, D2, and D3. And that's the important one to remember, that when you're in D4, you inspire others, you help others, you really want to help them go. So when you think about it, when you're having a diagnosing conversation, I want you to ask yourself two questions. The first one, the person I'm looking at, speaking to, are they doing or are they learning? That's question number one. And then the second one, have a look at what is their commitment? What is their attitude towards what they are doing? Because those two questions are going to certainly help and guide you whether, the person in front of you is a D1 on a goal or task or a D4, a D3. So, the whole intention behind it is so that we can now understand where they are on that goal and task. Thank you for sharing, Aurelia. I love it. And, just to see if everyone's kind of understood this, and I'm going to give you a couple of scenarios. And then I'm going to ask you to grade yourself, whether you're a D1, D2, D3, D4 on a specific task. And I know Aurelia is going to love this one. So, let's say 3 months from today, we're all going to go and run a marathon. Where would you be? Would you be a D1 where you're going, okay, I've never really run, but yeah, that kind of sounds interesting. With a bit of guidance, a bit of help, I think I can get to run a marathon in 3 months. If you're a D1, drop in D1. If you're a D2 where you're going, I've tried running, I don't enjoy it, I really am not even interested in doing this, I can't do it and I'm really not interested, then you probably D2, drop a D2 in. If you're a D3, so you kind of go, well, I've done some running, been fairly consistent, maybe I haven't run the whole 42 kilometers, but I think in 3 months with some help, some coaching, we can get there. Drop in D3. And of course, if you're like Aurelia, who's going like 3 months marathon, got this, then grade yourself as a D4. I just want to get the idea that, you understand that different development levels. So thank you for sharing. Let me give you a totally different answer. So next week, the second scenario, next week, I all want you to go and do a webinar to your organization. You work for a large organization, maybe 1,000 people are going to be on the call. And I want you to set up from inviting everyone, running the webinar, using the technology, understanding who attended, who didn't attend, get them information out, get them slides, something in that respect. So you've got about 1,000 people next week for your company. CEO is going to be there and he's going to want to report on who was there, what did they learn, what didn't they learn, who wasn't there, why not? So how do you guys feel about that? Would you rate yourself as a D1, D2, D3, D4 on running a webinar next week for your organization, 1,000 people attending? D3s, D4s, yeah, I love it. I love it. And the important part is you can start to see that, you're at, Aurelia says D1, thank you. You can start to see that, for a given task and goal, we are at different development levels. We are individuals, we've got, again, we go back to competence, the skills and the commitment, our enthusiasm, our attitude towards it. Doesn't mean we can't learn things, but we're all starting at different points. So thank you for sharing all of that. So now let's go on to the matching, because, we've set the goal with the individual in front of us. They know what a clear and good job looks like. They know what they need to do. They know when they need to do it by. We've looked at their style. We've diagnosed it. We understand where their development level is. Now, as leaders, we've got to respond in giving them that sort of conversation so that we can support them. And that's where the matching section comes in. And here's a quote that I love this one, because this is, here's Hubert Jolly. If you don't know him, he's the executive chairman of Best Buy in the US. And, he goes about saying, that the role of a leader is not to be the smartest person in the room, but to create an environment which others can be successful. And if you attended the webinar last week, kind of a little bit out of servant leadership, that's really it, helping other people to develop, helping other people to think bigger. Because, quite often when we get stuck in the thinking of, well, all the brains are in my office. I'm the leader, the brains are here, you guys know nothing. And that's not the case. So how do we make the group far better by open conversations? How do we learn from it? And this is part of it. So the matching conversation is really getting agreement on, the development level, providing the appropriate leadership style in there. And again, like the development levels, there's also 4 leadership styles. So you can see the development levels at the bottom. Up at the top, you can see the leadership style conversations, which really is, am I directing the person? Am I coaching them, re-energizing, reteaching them? Or am I just supporting them? They've got the skills. I just need to help them build the confidence in their competence while they're learning. Or, if you're already a D4, then it's just like, well, how do I treat them as a value contributor? How do I just delegate? Because they know how to do it, but they might need a little bit of support. And quite often, one of the questions I then get is, well, okay, when you think about it and matching it to these 3 skills, how much time should, and how much time should one really be spending? Whoops, I'm just jumping a little bit far ahead there. How much time should one be spending in each of these areas? And I'll show you a slide in just a little bit of time. I'll show you a slide in sort of the times. But as you can see, the 3 skills really is about goal setting, diagnosing, and matching. And how do we match the leadership style to the development levels on that specific goal, on that specific task? Not the individual. That's the important one, not the individual. And of course, why do we even need to go and match? And before SL2, with Blanchard, we test this every time we do. And we generally find that 54%, so a little bit more than 1 out of 2 managers only use one style naturally. About 88% are able to comfortably use 2 styles naturally. So, that's almost 9 out of 10 people. And, if you're like me, I always want to be that 1% who can use all 4 styles naturally. But if you think about your best leader, right at the beginning that we were mentioning and what they did, I'm quite certain that if that leader that you call the best leader only treated you and gave you 1 style, or maybe 2 at the best, you would not consider them a best leader. At least, when I think of Mark and all the experiences we had together, we're still great friends today. Absolutely. He did not just do the 1 style. He didn't just do the 2 styles. He literally lived all 4. But it is an intentional thing. It's not something that just happens by natural, by accident. It's something that you got to do intentionally. You got to practice it. So think about it. When we're matching, again, it's how do we do, we said we direct. So what are the leadership styles, the leadership behaviors we need to show when we're directing? So yeah, we've got to structure it, help the people plan it, maybe monitor it, help them monitor it. We've got to be teaching them. We might need to define things. We might need to organize things. But those are some of the leadership behaviors that we do in the directing phase. And again, if you go back to, the 4 quadrants we had there, directing was certainly one of them, because it's one of the 2 key elements in any conversation that has. One is the directive. And, some of the also behaviors, I'm not going to go through those. You're going to get the slides so you can make notes of them and have a look at that. But these are just some of the things, some of the behaviors in there that happens in the directive stage for us as managers, as leaders. The second part is how do we support them? Because one we direct, another one we support. If you think of as you get to, directive very much more heavily involved in D1, D2. When you go to D3, D4, it's more about supporting them, not only supporting them, but it's more about supporting them. So what are some of the things we can do to support? We're going to ask their questions. We're going to ask for their input, encourage them, listen to them. If need, we're going to explain why certain things, or we might need to facilitate and help them do some problem solving. But as you can see, from the type of questions we're going to ask, it's going to be very, very different conversations to when we're being very directive. So just as an example, and just going back to this slide, if you think of, if we were doing a live event and we were all standing around the table and suddenly a fire broke out, well, we would need to be very directive. It would be like, guys, there's a fire, there's the exit, let's go. There's no discussion, there's no thinking about it, let's just get it done. Very, very directive. I certainly wouldn't be, going, well, there's a fire. Do you guys think we should leave? What do you guys think? Okay, yeah, maybe we should. Do we need to leave now? Later? Then we'll go around the room. No, not going to happen. So being supportive in that situation would not work. So, some of the behaviors that happen in the supportive conversations. And again, you've got them all. So we'll go through those quite quickly because I do want to leave some time for a Q&A at the end. And I've still got several slides. So, at the end of the day, as leaders, as managers, we've really got 3 choices with our team members. One, we can match our conversation style to their development levels, or we can, either intentionally or unintentionally, quite often it happens unintentionally, we can either over-supervise or under-supervise. And we'll talk a little bit about that because, again, I said to just as a rough guideline, where is the percentage of time supposed to be in? And I know this is a busy slide, but you're going to have it so you can look at it. As you can see, when you go from the S1 conversation, which aligns with, the development level 1, there's far more directive than there is support. Then it starts, the decreases in terms of directive and increases in terms of support. And even when you get to, your D4 level or S4 level, have a look at that. It's not that all of a sudden we're only, being supportive and not being directive. We still are being directive. It might only be 20% of the times, but we still are being directive. Likewise, when you think of the D1 level, the enthusiastic beginner, it doesn't mean that what we do is just direct them. We also need to support them. So again, it's the combination of two being used in different percentages that makes the huge difference on the styles of our conversation. And those conversations are the ones that your employees are going to leave and go like, yeah, this meeting, this conversation was really impactful. Or they're going to go like, there's this conversation, he just frustrated me, didn't listen to me, overwhelmed me, and who does he think he is, and what am I even doing in this place, because I can't do anything right. But that's the responses we might get. I know they're a bit extreme, but I'm just trying to drive the point home of what happens when we either match or we don't match their style. So ultimately the best one is to match it perfectly in there, but unfortunately it can happen when we certainly over supervise. So if you've got an individual on a task or a goal who's a D3 or a D4, and we utilize more support or more of the supportive rather than the more of the directive rather than the supportive leadership styles, then we tend to over supervise. And anyone here felt micromanaged before in their lives? And if you felt micro, just drop it in. I mean, I jumped in the car the other day with my mom, and I mean, I've been driving for, I don't know, more than 30 plus years. And I jump into the car and she's still telling me how to drive. I did feel a bit over-supervised or micromanaged. So if you've ever felt over-supervised or micromanaged, just drop that into the chat box and say, yeah, or give me a thumbs up saying, yeah, I felt over-supervised. Or likewise, have you ever been in the situation where you felt under-supervised? Yeah, Jonathan says, yeah, under-supervised is literally when someone, has taken, thank you, both of them, yeah. It's taken, yeah, how to do it, get on and do it, and then just kind of abandoned you. And you kind of go like, I don't even know where to start. So no, thank you for sharing. But those are important ones to realize that by mismatching, we either over-supervise, micromanage, or under-supervise, and people feel abandoned in there. So an important distinction to remember in there. So now we're going to practice, and let me just jump to this one so you can actually see that a bit better. And I'm going to read that out, and then I want you guys to, we're practicing. So we're going to grade, we're going to put Lisa in there. We're going to analyze Lisa. Is she D1, D2, D3, D4? Lisa's an experienced sales rep. She's been with the company a couple of months. She's really articulate, intelligent, highly successful in her old position. Yet she seems to be, on track with profiling and her product knowledge. But unfortunately, she's considering leaving the company. Why? Because of her inability to access, new customers, resulting in fewer appointments set and feeling that she's not able to use her talents. So, I'm curious to hear, what do you guys are? Aurelia says D2, absolutely, that's a good one. And let's just talk a little bit about it. But I want to get everyone else's thoughts in there, because when you think about it, she's articulate, she's intelligent, highly successful in her old position. So yeah, D2. So she certainly has a lot of knowledge in there. Product portfolio, product knowledge is growing, but she's, she's lacking the skills in terms of gaining new customers, accessing them, resulting in fewer appointments. And now she's thinking about leaving the company because she's suddenly feeling very, very demotivated. So, whoever put D2 in there, absolutely well done. And I'm curious, D3, I'd love to hear, and there's no right or wrong because this is practice. So we are learning, we're not doing it for real. But at least, if you think about it, and we said D3, we went out with a D3 style and they were in a D2, the mismatch would not be as great as if we'd given them, a style 1 or a style 4. At least we would have given them a style 3 and they needed style 2. And we would have hopefully noticed the subtleties in there. So great work, guys. Let's try. I think I got one more in here. Oh, that's just, yeah, going back to it again, because, yeah, just going back, it is. I mean, the first thing we need to say is, what is the goal? What is the task? What is her development level on that task? Perfect, thank you. And that's, okay, D2. And then, what are some of the behaviors? So if we go back to Lisa, and, what are some of the behaviors that would accelerate her performance? And I just want to jump back there. So what are some of the behaviors that would help Lisa accelerate some of her performance? Drop those in the chat box. We would love to get some thoughts from you guys on that, because she's considering leaving the company. She's struggling to gain access to new customers. Fewer appointments are being set up, and she's in a sales position. So how could we help Lisa in this situation? Any thoughts, guys? Love to get your thoughts, love to get your ideas. Drop them into the chat box. Support and guide, absolutely. How would you help support and guide? Supervise, yeah. Give me a little bit more. What would supervision, support, guidance look like? What are some of the things you could actually do? So go one level deeper. Do a meeting with her together, absolutely. Maybe partner her up with, one of the other senior members of the team, support her in a meeting with a customer, absolutely. Partner up with, one of the other sales guys. Ask her, how is she doing, what process is she going through to understand, then at least we can say, well, okay, have you tried different things? Direct, encourage, go to meetings, absolutely. So there's lots of different things that we can certainly try. Mentorship, thank you, Simon, absolutely. So many different things we can do. Share some success stories on how to gain customers, absolutely. We could do maybe a little bit of, guidance in there, help her to plan, helping to look at certain things. So we could go into a lot of detail in terms of give her the tools. Absolutely. No, thank you guys for sharing. So let's have a look at, Rick. Now, Rick's an experienced marketing director. He's been feeling a little bit ill. He's been up the last 3 nights, and not because of load shedding, but he's preparing for an important meeting coming up, a series of executive reviews that he needs to do. Over the past, he's had some fantastic feedback about his previous presentations, and he's always been extremely positive. Even though he's successful in it, he's agonizing over the presentations. And I say he's a little bit unsure. He feels that his reputation is on the line every time he walks into the room to give the presentation. So what would you say Rick is, jumping to that one, what is the goal and task? And I think, we can define that quite quickly as well. Okay, he's got a series of presentations to give. So what is his developmental level? So let's, going back, what is his developmental level in there? So, he's done this before. His prior presentations have always been extremely positive, so they've been good. He is successful, but he's agonizing over these presentations, seeing that, he feels that his reputation is on the line. And I'd love to know, well, what are your thoughts? Okay, we've got a D1 in there. And, if you want to change your mind on that one, that's also fine. If you stick to D1, that's also fine, because we are practicing. But what else could he be? Because, I think, D4, I like Jonathan, D4, motivation, D3. Interesting. Yeah, Victor says D3, D4. I like it, guys. I like your thinking, because you've added added an extra dimension in there. And yeah, absolutely. He is a D, he's either a D, will change to D3. So he's either a D3 or a D4. And we need a little bit more information, but you're quite right in starting out with D3, D4, because he could be a D3 where, his presentations are good, but he kind of feels like, they're not always that great. So then he's lacking the confidence, which would make him a D3. Or on the other hand, maybe he was a fantastic D4, and now he's just, could be there where he's going, well, I've just done it so many times, I'm now bored. And that could be a D4 having regressed into a D3. But in this case, absolutely D3, because, he's done some good ones, but he's still uncertain. And that uncertainty really comes up with, seeing that his reputation is on the line every time he walks into, a room to give a presentation. Because if he was a D4 in that, he'd be going, I got this. I mean, I've always had fantastic, positive presentations. I've got this. I know how to do it. So absolutely, I would agree with everyone, D3 in there. And, my next question is, so, what are some of the behaviors we can help him accelerate his performance in there? Just drop some in there. What are some of the behaviors? How could we help Rick go from a D3 to a D4? Now, what he really needs there is, how do we help build his confidence in the competence? So how could we do that? Any thoughts? Any thoughts on that? And then I literally got a couple of slides, which I'm going to probably motivate, positive, absolutely. Hopefully everyone's got a couple of minutes. I might overrun by a couple of minutes. Appreciate his work. Yeah, exactly. Confidence, show him back, the presentations he's done, how well they have gone. Absolutely. All of those things will certainly drive him in that direction. So just quickly going through it, yeah. But this is an important one. I'd love you to, because I believe people don't describe what they see what they can describe, and it might sound a little bit strange, but you never describe what you see. You're always going to see, and then you're going to describe, see what you can describe. So I'd love to know, what are you going to do differently? I mean, we've spoken about a lot of things today. What's that one thing that, you're going to do differently as a result of what we've spent, the last 58 minutes looking at? What's that one thing that you're going to change about? You've learned something. What's that one thing that you're going to change as you go back to your team this afternoon, tomorrow, to your families? What's that one thing? I'd love to hear. Drop that into the chat box. What's that one thing you're going to do differently as a result of everything that we've discussed this afternoon? Is it going to be helping people set better SMART goals? Is it going to be trying to do some additional diagnosing of what development level they're in? Is it going to be trying to match their development level with your leadership style conversations? And I love it, diagnose the team, absolutely. And again, when you talk about teams, the individuals in the team are going to be D1 to D4, but then you're going to take a look at the team as a whole, and the team itself can be a D1 or a D4. Absolutely. John says focus more on where they are and how to enable them. Yeah, listen. Aurelia says listen, show interest, understand, identify people. Yeah, D1, D4, and approach accordingly. Communicate. Try to find things out as what they're struggling on. Absolutely, I love it. So this is really, really an important one. And again, when people are helped and guided and trained and coached in learning these skills, it certainly makes a big, big difference in there, and I just want you to think for a moment, think of your own team or your own organization. How much more could you accomplish, if your people were all performing, the critical tasks, critical goals on D4? How much more, how much faster could you, could things happen? Could things move forward? What results would happen? And that's an important one to try and remember, because that's eventually what we're trying to do, is get our team members on all the critical goals and tasks to D4 as quickly as possible, so that they can impact the organization. And one final just before we go into Q&A, just one final poll, and this one's more for myself and helping me understand and helping to give you the support you need. So I'm just going to quickly launch that. And if you would like a link to some articles, ebooks, and some of the case studies I've mentioned and spoken about, then just go ahead and click on that one. You've got multiple choice. You can click them all if you want. I'm not going to show anyone this. On the other hand, if you want an invitation to our next webinar, then just go ahead and drop that in. Or, if you'd like to discuss your initiative, understand specifically more about, how you can learn, these skills, or how you can help your team with them, then drop that in. If for whatever reason, and I think sometimes the poll is not working as well as it should on Zoom, then just drop it into the communication. I mean, if you'd like a link to the articles, ebooks, if you would like an invitation to the next webinar, or otherwise, discuss initiatives. So drop those in if those will, if those might be of help to you. I'll quickly. Jonathan says, A&B, perfect. No, thank you guys. Anyone drop them in, we'll have a conversation in there. And I'll quickly just jump out of that one. And we'll need to go back to this one so we can still see each other. Something to remember is that, leadership isn't something you do to people. It's something you do with people. And that's an absolutely an important one to remember. So, I'm hoping that everyone has taken something out of it. Hopefully everyone has learned something this afternoon. If you haven't, if you've enjoyed it, just give me a thumbs up just so that I can get some feedback, because I believe feedback really is the breakfast of champions. Thank you, Jonathan. And I hope you've enjoyed it. I've enjoyed sharing this with you. So I'm looking forward to seeing you guys in some of my next sessions. And thank you to everyone. And I wish you all a wonderful, wonderful afternoon. And have fun trying these skills out. And hopefully you've enjoyed it. And hopefully you'll go out and be courageous enough to try it. So thank you, everyone. Have a wonderful afternoon. And we'll see you all next time. Thanks, guys.